Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the first event of Bahujan Economics. As you know, we're going to be talking about admissions abroad, uh, and this series today focus on EU, and this will be followed by events organized to look at admissions for PhD in economics in the US subsequently. Um, so we have two speakers today, Dr. Sofia Amaral and Dr. Shumit Mashkar. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your names correctly. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. Uh,
Hello.
okay. So Dr. Sofia is an economist at the Center for Labor Economics of the IFO Institute at the University of Munich. Her research interests include development economics, family economics, and economics of crime. Her work is focused on the causes of violence against women and what type of interventions are effective in preventing it. The focus of her research has been UK, Mexico, and Mozambique. Thank you so much, Sophia, for joining us today. Um, then Professor Sumit Mashkar is Associate Professor and Associate Dean of Student Affairs at OP Jindal University in Sonipat. Um, he holds a BA from University of Mumbai, MA MPhil from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and DPhil from the University of Oxford. Um, he obtained his ME and MPhil degrees in political science from the Center for Political Studies at JNU. Uh, prior to joining OP Jindal, he was based at the Center for Modern Indian Studies, or CMIS, at the University of Göttingen, where he held various fellowships. Thank you, Sumit, for joining us here today. We're very happy that
Hello.
both of you could join. Hi, Aditi. Uh,
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry for the delay.
Aditi, do you want to make some opening remarks before we move on to our speakers?
I would just like to talk a little about the platform, the Bahujan Economist, and because you have already introduced speakers, I will thank speakers for agreeing to be part of it, and I'm super excited because we have two amazing speakers who have always been so supportive, and we couldn't have had a better start than this. And so just to put it briefly, the objective of the platform, and it has been a dream to have more Bahujan students, Bahujan economists in the discipline, and we are hopeful that with support system and with this platform in place, we'll have more representation, more SCST uh, uh, candidates in the discipline, especially women, because currently we have, I would say, the minimum number of representation in this discipline. And thank you, Sumit and Sophia, for joining us today, and we really look forward to the session. Arushi, have we discussed the format of the session, or we haven't?
Please discuss the format of this.
So we request Sophia to talk about things related to admission timeline, requirements, and what opportunities Bahujan students especially have in European universities for higher education. And this should be about 20 to 25 minutes long. And then we request Sumit to talk about scholarships, admission process, and since he has been exposed to both India and European universities, we would also request him to talk a little about pedagogical differences in both the places if time permits. And that should again be 20 to 25 minutes long. After that, we request all of you to keep sending your doubts in the chat that we will pick up at the end of the discussion, and we'll request speakers to answer them. Um, so the question should be answered at the end of the discussion. I hope this is okay.
Yeah, very much.
Ah, okay.
Hi everyone, thank you for hosting this session. I'd like to ask if the meeting is being recorded because not everyone was able to join. So it will be
Yes,
useful if
Vibhu,
Aditi could share it.
thank you for your question, Vibhu. It is being recorded, And we'll have the speakers start first, with Sophia speaking first, and then Sumit, and then we will we will open the room for questions, and subsequently we will. So I guess the floor is open for Sophia now. Thank you so much.
All right. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Aditi, for inviting me to this. I'm a big fan of Aditi's work and path, so I'm quite happy to support her on this. And I can explain to you all a little bit where our connection comes from in a bit. So let me share my screen just so you can follow me better in case you're not listening well or something. So my name is Sofia. As mentioned, you can call me Sofia. I don't know need for the doctor. And I've studied in the UK. I did my master's and my PhD from the University of Birmingham. And I don't come from any, just to give a little bit of my background, I don't come from any top university in Portugal, which is my home country. So I also don't come from a rich family or something. So this was a lot of, this was something that was very much in mind when I was applying for masters. I did not have, I was in the top 10 percentile of my cohort. So, but really 9%. So it wasn't like I was the best student of my cohort at all. So this was my background. This is my background. So in all, just to highlight that in all of my decisions for master, PhD, and so forth and so on, all these things were very important when making the decisions. So I did all my my graduate studies in the UK. Now I'm working in Germany, and while in Germany, I've already helped recruit 4 interns, and usually our interns work with us for about 6 months. 3 PhD students, 2 of them are working with me right now in my research project, and 1 is working for our center. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise, but I hope you can listen. And I take part in the assistant professor recruitment that takes place every year at the university. So I attend interviews in the US, I attend the interviews and local meetings here, and I'm part of the review process at the university. My husband, just so you can understand a bit of my what I know about this, my husband also did his master's and his PhD in the UK, and again the same thing, not medium class family in Portugal, comes from, it's not a top university at all, and also not top students in our cohort. And none of us, we did not do GRE. We just did the IELTS and TOEFL, and that's it. So when I was, so let me tell you about my experience when I was recruiting PhD students. Yes. Feel free to stop me when, yes. Yes. Hello? Shall I continue?
Sophia, I think that was a mistake.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. If you have any questions, you can stop me while I'm talking. So just to give you a highlight with this experience. So at the moment, I think we were reasonably successful. So I am here in Germany at the university on a 6-year contract. Germany doesn't have tenure, but it's the same as it's the same system as the assistant professorship positions in the US. And my husband is at the Federal Reserve Board with a job for life. So just to highlight that really this background that we have, it's not at all, I don't think it was a major, didn't affect our career paths at all. Even if we didn't go to the best schools or had the best grades or something of this sort. Then in terms of the recruitment of the PhDs, as I was mentioning, so For me, while I was recruiting the PhDs, grades were a starter. This is the first thing we look when we receive the CVs, but they are not at all, they don't need to be the highest grades. But of course, students with very bad grades are, I would say, automatically moved out of the pile, unless we see that there was some reason for a particular situation. Then what I think is important when looking at the CV of students is where did they study, not necessarily studying in very prestigious places, but for example, one of the students we recruited, she did the master's in Sweden and she had studied in many places abroad up to her master's. And that to me just shows me that it's someone that is very flexible and is able to move around and be successful in various different settings. Then internships, whether they have our research assistants training, because all of this just that it shows that people are hardworking, motivated about something, flexible, and they are persistent about pursuing a particular goal. Then in terms, what really matters to me, and I think this is more and more becoming very crucial, because we all know you are very good, you have lots of lots of softwares and technical trainings and so on, but sometimes what I find missing in a lot of students is motivation, and deep motivation about understanding a topic. And for example, I can tell you in the case of Aditi works with our team in one research project. I can tell you that everyone in the group, when we interviewed Aditi, we all wanted to work with her because she was so excited about the topic we were interviewing her about. So no matter anything else that she had in her CV, which was not that was not the case at all, but despite all of that, what for us, what mattered was this person is so motivated that that's who we want in our team. So putting that across is very important. Then also, what was successful to us is students who had a concrete plan for their research process. So they were realistic, they had a proposal, which are very realistic, clear, feasible, and original. And I think this showed us that these are people who that are independent researchers, and from then on it's just growing. And then finally, for any job, nobody likes bad colleagues, so coming across in interviews and even in the letters as a nice colleague, I think goes a really long way. And I wouldn't, in any of the interviews I have been, arrogant people or these are people that are immediately thrown out of the pile. So yes. So then in terms of general notes that I have here for the process of applications in Europe, and then in specific regarding Germany and in the UK, which is what I know more. Yeah, continue? Yes, okay. So so my understanding is that in the UK, in Europe, there isn't a set timeline or a uniform process. So many countries. So this sort of situation that happens in the US, it doesn't necessarily take place in Europe. So for this, my advice is to keep looking in the platforms or the universities or the cities that you're particularly interested, and keep visiting those websites and researching where the opportunities are. So these jobs that I see at UK, for the case of the UK, on Twitter, you can also find a lot of people with calls on looking for PhD students. And so that, and where else? And it really needs to be by university to university. Say you are interested in going to study in Switzerland, then you would be doing your research there place by place. Um, yes, it's not easy, but as far as I know, this is the process. Then there is more or less a timeline in the sense that it starts from, say, December, but many times I've seen calls coming out for PhDs positions in June, for example, to start in September. So that's why I'm saying keep an eye out. And in Germany, so in Germany, again, there is, so people would start looking for PhD students, say January to March, more or less. But again, as I said, it's not a set process, so you need to keep searching. Um, and in Germany is a little bit more complicated because, so for example, here in Munich, we have the Munich Graduate School of Economics. They would have a set process of applications, I think, and in February, I believe. But for example, within the university, you can also enroll as a PhD student, for example, at IFO, and enroll in the Munich Graduate School of Economics, and the process is quite different, for example. So really, you need to search university by university, essentially, and place by place. So it's best if you target, I want to work for the Max Planck Institute in Dresden or something like this. So I'm going to search for vacancies there, for example. Typically, students would have classes in the first year, in some places in the second year as well, with a lower load. And the big difference I find in Germany in relation to any other place I've seen is that students are enrolled within the research group right from the beginning, and they are enrolled typically on a research project right from the start. So you would be working towards producing a publishable paper right from your first year. And this is quite different from the other countries. And there's a lot, because the research groups are small, there's a lot of one-to-one time and work with advisors and other research groups. Then just to continue, not a lot of emphasis in terms of GRE and other things. Some places request this, but it's not, I don't think this is a major requirement. And then in the UK, there is more a more structured process than in other countries, but again, go back to the same point I mentioned before, between December and March, but keep looking. More competitive places like the LSE, UCL, or Warwick would be following the same structure as in the US, but the other universities not so much. And I would say that you as from my experience recruiting, people would tend to look at candidates and try to match it in terms of also their interest. So in your case, if say for example you're interested in research and development or topics specific to India, targeting researchers and departments where you have people with these interests becomes more advantageous. And that's it for me. And then in the end, if you need, one of the interns I worked with before last year, he prepared this sheet of with information on grants that were available to him. He is from Uttar Pradesh and he's now at the World Bank, and he did his master's in Switzerland. And he prepared this list of materials, which I'm happy to share with you after. Actually, all these materials I'm happy to share after. And that's it from me. If you have more questions. Stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I think this was very, very enlightening. I wish someone had told me all this before I was applying for my PhD. But Sumit, the floor is yours.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Arushi, and thanks, Aditi. I think I would first like to congratulate Aditi for taking this initiative, and not just economics, but also in other disciplines. People from the socially marginalized groups, especially the Dalits and tribals, have a very minimal presence, and especially abroad. I mean, I spent roughly 12 years first doing my PhD in Oxford, and then a couple of years in Germany doing my postdoc, and I spent a few months in Stanford, just visiting there and giving lectures. But my experience obviously was there. The situation is changing, but very slowly. You can now find one or two students from Dalit and Adivasi backgrounds, and to a certain extent other backward castes also. But the Dalits and Adivasis, definitely we need to bring the information. So I think I'm really, it's really nice that Sofia actually started with an interesting note about she coming from a very humble background, and so her husband. And this is what needs to be really highlighted from the beginning, that several of us, we don't need to really go into our backgrounds and the humbleness of it. But the point actually what she really highlighted is extremely important, is that don't put your background into like as a barrier for your entry to any big places in the world. So yes, we all, several of us have difficult backgrounds, but now you are more or less placed in decent Indian universities. So from there, it shouldn't be that difficult to make a jump. What you need to do is what Sophia has highlighted. You need to have a plan. You need to go in a very systematic manner. Now, depending on which country you go, you need to have a plan. So without plan, there is no way out. The second thing, which and now this is following up, because we started the discussion with people coming from humble background, is that there is a common misunderstanding in India that only people who have connections abroad, or those whose parents are into academics or somehow they are elite, only they manage to go. Yes, they manage to go, they will continue to go, but that doesn't mean that the system is so strong that the others cannot go. So as long as you follow the procedures, as long as you make sure that you have all the necessary uh, tick boxes of in terms of research experience, maybe publications if it is required, then to my experience has been that the process is pretty fair in Europe. I mean, the chances of discrimination are low. Obviously, there are problems abroad as well, but the chances of discrimination based on the caste or being an indigenous group are minimal in Europe. So there could be racial thing, but other than that, a very minor part of that. But for an Indian, I think there are choices. So please definitely keep this thing out of your head, that only established people go, or somehow they have these great connections. Somebody makes a call and they do an admission. Absolutely not. And I have been to the best places, also decent places, and nothing of that sort exists, that people are making phone calls and nobody, and just people go for whatever PhD or even postdoc fellowships. Okay, so that's the first point I also wanted to start with. Now, what I have been asked to speak mainly is about the scholarships, about the funding. And if you look at what Sophia presented towards the end, there is a long list of funding. Now, I just want to maybe add to that, not the long list, maybe she can share the list and which can be then shared with everyone. But what I would like to highlight is the distinction between different kinds of funding. So the first kind of funding is probably there with the institution itself. So whichever university you want to apply, they may have a departmental funding or a university-wide funding. Now you need to really, because this session is not about the whole application procedure itself, but what I would definitely like to say is that this is a really kind of painful work, that you have to go through each and every university website and to look what kind of funding opportunities are there. So these are absolutely direct funding. So the university will highlight those fundings, so the departments will highlight those funding. So that across Europe, you can find those kind of fundings. The second kind of funding could be associated with a particular project. Now, this is something which the professors may apply for a big grant, or like the initial grant that is being given to the young faculty members, where they recruit PhD students based on a particular broader theme. Now you have to look at that particular proposal or the call, what exactly they're expecting, and if you fit into that particular project, or you can create a new project which can broadly fit into that bigger project, then obviously you have a better chance. So that's the second type of funding. The chances of getting into the second type of funding is very thin, but it's also specialized. So if you really are actually doing exactly the similar kind of research, then your chances are absolutely high. So you have to keep that as also an option open. And the third kind of funding is what we would like to call as the third party funding. So the third party funding is like you have the DFG in Germany, but also there are like several political parties, they have foundations in Germany and other kind of organizations. And these kind of organizations simply means that you apply for funding to those organizations. And of course, I'll come to the second part as well. And if you get the funding, then you go and start your PhD. Now, before you apply to this third-party funding, what is known as third-party funding, like DFG is one, Volkswagen found like the Volkswagen car, so they have a Volkswagen Foundation there, and they give really good funding. So there is a long list of foundations, especially in Germany. So if you Google research in Germany, you will come across one of the first or second links, and that will give you like absolutely all the information on like hundreds of fundings that are available. So what you need to do is you need to go and make you need to really invest a lot of time in going through each and every funding to see where you can fit yourself. And once you identify the funding, what you need to do is you need to contact the professors. And you need to tell the professor that, look, I have actually looked at this funding and I would like to apply for a PhD program, and will you support me? So what supporting means is that the professor will look at your research project and they will say, okay, we will, if you get the funding, we will give you a space to sit here, have an office space, and I will supervise your thesis. So that's third-party funding. The chances of getting third-party funding are really high because there is always a big pool of money and grants that is there. You need to really invest a lot of time in that. Because third-party funding requires like sometimes spending like 6 months into preparing a really solid research application. If the professors sitting in Germany like that application, of course, they will also invest a little bit. At times, especially with DFG kind of organizations, the professor becomes the principal applicant. And in those cases, the professors obviously will invest a lot of energy in that application. But please don't expect that for the professors will always be ready to invest that much energy. And there is no deadline as such, so it's a rolling deadline. So whenever you submit the application, you will hear back from them after 6 months or something like that. Similarly, for postdoc opportunities, there is a Humboldt Foundation where I was a fellow. They granted me a fellowship for 2 years to do a postdoc. So similar situation, you have to submit the application, 6 months later, the outcome is there. The good part of these big funding is that even when they reject, they will tell you why are they rejecting. So you can actually take those points into account and again reapply to same funding bodies. So that's as far as funding is concerned. As far as Britain is concerned, the United Kingdom, Sofia has already mentioned that there is a proper system that every October onwards, the application procedure starts, and there is a specific deadline for each university. With other universities, it's not necessarily that systematic. So in France, in Switzerland, in Denmark, all these universities don't necessarily have a strict deadline. So it's a rolling application. Again, you go to third-party funding. If you get the funding, you start your PhD. Obviously, those who have money can start pretty much, self-funded, pretty much as long as the professors agree, you can start your PhD whenever you feel like. So that's as far as funding is concerned. But the research in Germany is just one website, which is strictly speaking only about funding in Germany. You will have to look up for similar funding in France, in Switzerland, in Denmark. All of them have social science big funding opportunities. And you can, of course, contact some of the professors. And if you really like their profile, you can ask them that, I would really like to work with you. Can you suggest any funding opportunities where we can submit an application? So that's definitely one way of going. The other thing which I had also suggested in my previous session somewhere else is that there is this website called H-Net Asia. So HNet is a very good mailing list which actually keeps telling you what kind of opportunities are there. It is of course a good opportunity to also get to know of the literature, but that's one way of getting to know. The second thing is the jobs.ac.uk. You can also select all countries you're interested, and they keep sending me emails about what kind of opportunities are available. So it's jobs.ac.uk. But there are really more websites. I'm just giving you an example of this. So that's as far as funding. As far as timeline is concerned, I have in my opinion, you should at least keep 14 to 15 months in hand before you apply for any program. So let's say, for example, the program is to start next year, October. You should have already started this year in April, because it's really several things. Because writing proposal is probably just one really tiny part of it. The rest is this super management about maybe looking at whether you need a publication, then you can write publication something within those 6 months. So you need to really, I would ideally say 14 to 16 months is the absolute time. If you really start with that, you are absolutely in the best position. So for example, next year is 2021. If you start 2021 April, then you're really best place for 2022. You can still go ahead, but from experience, I'll tell you that if the deadline is 10 days from now, don't apply for those positions, because you really need to invest in research proposal, get it like thoroughly checked with somebody. So don't just apply for the sake of rejection. You should only apply for the sake of getting acceptance. And for that, you need to spend at least 2-3 months solid on any application. Okay. Now, as far as organization, like time frame is concerned, as I said, with UK, it's very systematic from October onwards, and the rest is pretty much rolling. Germany, France. So you need to really talk to those particular professors, or sometimes the website also gives a list of PhD students. So there is no harm in also writing to PhD students rather than directly talking to professors, because if you really ask super basic questions, the professor may not even reply to your emails. So it's really important that please do your homework, and don't just write random questions like I'm interested in doing a PhD. Two things you must, this is my opinion, and we can differ in approach. Two things you must have when you write an email to a professor. One is a short proposal, at least 2 to 3 pages or 4 pages. And the second thing is your CV. These two things, if you have when you write the first email to the professor can more or less look at the proposal and more or less then make a decision. Okay, we can start. You can't start with this 1 or 2 line email saying that you're interested, blah blah blah. That probably doesn't help. Maybe 1 or 2 exceptional professors might respond, but 99.99% you will definitely not get an answer. So please make sure that you do your homework nicely. Also go through each and every university website, and as I said, the best is the ongoing PhD students. I think most of them are happy to reply. If you really write your email in a very systematic manner, question number 1, 2, 3, whichever you want, so that you also get the systematic reply. Okay. Now, as far as academic environment is concerned, as far as the UK is concerned, and to certain extent that goes to various other universities, is you have this one supervisor and you work with him or her. Sometimes you have joint supervision, but that's pretty much the model that you have across Europe. As far as maybe sometimes in Germany, you have these research teams, and this is especially in the field of economics. We don't have, I mean, in the field of political science or sociology, we don't have, but especially with sociology and political science, now increasingly we are moving towards more quantitative methods. So with quantitative methods, the likeliness of working in big teams is very high. So you need to, and also when they say it's quantitative methods, it's really, and this is for sociology and political science I'm talking, this is as sophisticated as economics. So when they say that they need quantitative skills, it is not really basic. You make sure that you really fulfill the basic criteria. Okay. Now that's I think, yeah, so that's pretty much is what I wanted to say. So we have done the funding, you have the time frame as far as applications are concerned, and as far as academic environment is concerned, there are slight models, different, not really model, it's about for example, so UK or any big university will have more students anyway. So there are more activities. So go to any big universities, more established names. So they will have more events. If you go to a smaller university, this is always a big challenge that they don't have that dynamism, and that you have to be well prepared for. I mean, but anyway, there is not much in your hand because you will go where exactly your application is accepted. But all I'm saying is that if you really want a more dynamic environment, then you have to choose like the bigger universities, because they will always have more events going on throughout the year. With smaller universities, smaller departments, there are lesser activities. But that shouldn't be a big problem anyway. As long as there is a good student community, especially the PhD student community, it is very much needed. Also, for personal reasons, but also for intellectual reasons. You need to have that dynamic interaction with other students when you're writing and when you're thinking. So that, yeah, I think that's for now from my side. And yeah, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so
Can I
much.
just can I
Sorry.
just say something that I was Aditya also asked me to mention and I forgot super quick. So one, just to go back to your point, Sumit, which is great that you also have experience with working with Germany, in Germany. So yeah, so actually the funding, just to say, so investing in, I know it takes quite a lot of time to invest in getting funding and so on, but the good thing about Germany, especially, and I guess Switzerland and the Nordics, so once you have it, it's really take a deep breath and just focus on studies, because the pay is very good. And if you are employed in a university, you are a government, you're considered a government employee. So you have everything for 4 years covered, for attending conferences, every single thing that you need, you will be covered. So you really just go and focus on research and being happy. So the other topic which Aditi mentioned is, so in many countries, in also in Germany and also in the UK, there's also very, very good departments of political science, sociology, epidemiology, public health, who often have even more funding than economics departments. And if you are interested in doing political science or things with politics or health, these are very good options also, as you were mentioning. So, and especially public health and epidemiology, these are usually departments where they would have a lot of funding. And there's a lot of schools of public health opening, public policy schools opening. So keeping an eye for those is also a great, great opportunity. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Sophia, and thank you very much, Sumit. This was very, very informative and also very encouraging. I'm not sure if Aditi is currently connected to ask the questions, so I'll just go ahead and start pulling the questions for you. Okay, so I think the first question is from Suresh. He is wondering about the process in France. So, if either of you feel comfortable speaking to the process in France, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the only information that I'm aware of, and through people who have done the PhDs, is that you need to look up again the same thing, the funding, as well as you need to talk to the professors there. So the university website should clearly mention, but as I said, please, whomever you contact, whenever, around the world actually, please make sure that you have those 3-4 pages written, like solid 3-4 pages as proposal and the CV. Then the professors, if they're interested, then they will definitely guide you through different kind of funding opportunities. So there is no standard, but I'm sure there are these different école, whatever they call in France. There are different écoles, and these are research institutes affiliated to universities, I think, and they offer good funding. But again, I think the way to go ahead with such kind of, I think rather than choosing country, what I usually recommend is whoever scholars you're reading, make a list of those scholars and see where they are based. And if you think that this is one particular scholar I would really like to work with, or you make a list of 10 people that you're happy to work with wherever they are, then just ask them that if there are any funding. So if they are based in France, if they are based in Denmark, Switzerland, that is irrelevant in a way. So first you make up your mind that if you want to go to a particular professor or to a country. So in either case, you need to put your act together in some way. But yeah, Sophia, you can go.
No, so I'm not very familiar with the process in France. As far as I understand, is similar to what I described above. So every university, they would have their deadlines depending on which grants are coming in. So it's not set. So you need to search, as you were mentioning. I want to work with this person, so I'm going to search for opportunities in he or her department, and email her and so forth and so on. I believe that for example, for PSE, so the Paris School of Economics, Aix-en-Marseille, and Toulouse, so they would probably have a set process, and the one for political science in Paris. So they would have, I guess, very strict deadlines, and they would mimic, I guess, the US process. But aside from that, I don't know more.
Okay, great, thank you. Um, there is another question from Vishakha. It's directed to Sophia, but Sumit, please feel free to jump. It says, so Vishakha wanted to ask, what is the key difference in terms of academic training, how PhD programs are structured in Europe versus US?
Mhm. So in I will tell you here in Germany and what happens in the UK. So in Germany, students have in the first year core courses, so advanced courses for economics in the first year, and then in the first and second year it's optional. We have specific topics and to say, for example, social policies and labor economics, and we have one professor that comes and does a series of lectures for a week, and students do a paper, and they have to do a bunch of these courses throughout their PhD, for example. So the more topical courses. Then on top of this, as I mentioned, because you are allocated to the research group, the chairs. So say, for example, if you are in the chair of behavioral, so in that group, they would have their set processes. So there's set trainings that you would have to go through. But it's not like you have to do, it's not so much like in the US that you are 2 years just studying a bunch of things that wouldn't even be relevant to what you want to do after. It's more targeted. You have the core basic that everybody has, and then it's targeted to what you are doing, and you have a lot of one-to-one training and group training within your research group, um, instead of in general. So I would say this is a big difference. And in the UK, it's more or less the same, I think. If you, unless in UCL, LSE, Warwick, it's the same. Well, Warwick, I think it's just 1 year of classes, and then there's these topical courses, but the others is also 2 years, and then you do research. But in the others, you have 1 year of classes, and you're already doing research.
Yeah.
But so one thing I would say about, sorry, one thing I would have to say, um, in relation, I'm a bit biased towards the EU and the European. I'm from Europe, but I would say I find students from good universities in Germany extremely well trained, extremely well trained. Uh, so because I came to appreciate this because they have this within the group training that is very targeted to what they are doing, and they start from day one. You jump in, you sit at your desk, and there's a project there, and you are working with the professor on that project from the start. So by the time you finish, you already have 2 3 publications, and you are on your way. So they are not wasting time, essentially, which is a very efficient way of thinking in Germany.
So
Yeah, I, yeah, I think as far as the difference is concerned, in US the expectation is that you do this course for 2.5 years, something like that, and then you start the PhD. So the entire process might take about 7 years for you to get a PhD. With the European system now, it's become more stricter, so the chances of you finishing in 4 years is very high. So yeah, I think it really depends on which system you like. With most systems, I think the within 1 year you have to finish the coursework plus the you have to finalize your research project. So before you start your field work, so in maybe in the field of economics, they don't expect you to go and do field work. But in like anthropology, sociology, political science, unless you're again doing statistical analysis, maybe so the expectation in any case, I think whether you choose that method or you choose mostly statistical method, the idea is that you finish whatever you want to achieve in the next 3 years in the first year itself. So you need to have a proper project. So that is a must, either in that's in the European system. So if you want to finish your PhD within 4 years, then obviously Europe is the place to go for. But if you want to also spend some time, if you feel that you want to do a master's sort of again and go through that rigorous training of different sorts, then obviously you choose the American system. But I think like Sophia, I have my bias towards the British, I mean particularly with the British system, and I really like the training that I received in the British system. But yeah, feel free to go wherever you get a good admission. Yeah.
And I have to say also, so there's not a lot of Indian students I find applying to Portugal or to
Mhm.
Spain, and there's very good universities there too. And so there's a very good colleague of ours, Joseph Flavian Gomez. He comes from Bengal, and he did amazingly well in Madrid, and it's a great place to work at. So be quite um, broad of where you want to go. I guess is my message.
okay.
Yeah, and I think very quickly, I think this question about B1, I don't think you require any German language skills to go to Germany or French language. It's more to do with your personal, like social life. So if you really know the language, a little bit basic, then it's much more easy to get around and also to be, make friends and other. So social life is extremely important. As far as language is concerned, this is what you need it for. For otherwise, your professional life, you don't need it. But definitely, it is useful to have the language skills.
Okay.
I don't speak any word of German, so nothing. So fine.
So the next question is from Kunal. He asked a very specific question, but I'm just going to reframe so it's more general. So he knows a topic which is in his case the study of planned economy versus vis-a-vis the IT sector and the role of social justice policy in the age of automation and climate change. But I guess the more general interest question would be how does one approach these topics to produce a more coherent and good SOP? especially for Europe. And maybe concurrently, like how much does the SOP even matter in the larger scheme of things?
Sorry, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Either of you can go first if I was
Yeah,
audible.
Sophia, I mean, yeah, we can start with her.
Sorry, what is SOP? It's the proposal?
The statement
Statement of
of
purpose, yeah.
purpose.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
I don't know. So if I had to think, so I know, for example, from the PhD students I recruited, in my own experience, in my husband's experience, and my colleague, it was really, so I want to work in development economics. So I went and searched for people who were working on this, on the topics I cared about. I studied those papers, and then I developed my proposal based on my own ideas, but also based on also the research, the broad research interest of these people I was interested in working with. This that you mentioned looks very complex, very yet needs some trim and focus, but so I guess that's where I would start.
Great.
Yeah.
Sumit?
So if it's
Yeah.
automation, then there's groups which are working on automation. If it's climate change, then there are people who are working in climate change. Because I guess it's a bunch of things. It becomes difficult for someone evaluating your proposal to see where are you going at.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there are kind of differences with the US and the European system, whereby the SOPs, the statement of purpose, sometimes could be shorter one, and it is more personalized, where you also sometimes bring your own personal life into that SOP. Whereas in the European system, that personal life is not that important, and you stick to the research topic, and so where you come from, whatever experience personal, that is not that much at the center of the research proposal that you write for the European universities. So that is a big distinction that you need to really keep in mind. And then you need to have, at least for the European system, now things are changing since we applied in like way back in 2005. So things have changed. Now they require really shorter proposals, like unlike the earlier ones, they were happy with long ones. But as I said, like if you want to go for third party funding, then you ought to have a solid research proposal. It could go into like 25-page solid document. So it really depends on what funding. But in most cases, if you really look at the call, either for PhD program or whatever instructions are given, they usually specify what kind of proposal they require. Do they require a longer one or a shorter one? But I think I have told Aditi last time I spoke to her, is that you really need to have a separate session on SOP writing or like a research proposal writing, because
Mhm.
we won't be able to do justice in like 5 minutes or one comment, unfortunately.
Right.
But there are anyway, if you Google SOPs and research proposal, there are anyway like way too many models that are available online. Some outline what exactly the structure of the proposal should be. So that you can easily find online. But if there, and one-to-one is obviously very difficult for like anyone to guide through. But generally, there could be a session on writing research proposal. I personally feel, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also very useful to know which universities require what. Like in the US, they don't really require a research proposal, but I expect you to convey your ideas in the SOP. Uh, so, yeah. There is another question. I think it's directed to you directly, Sumit. Uh,
Mhm.
so we have a student with a very rich, with looks like a very rich CV He is UGC net JRF qualified and has
Mhm.
internship in various places and taken interviews of various important people. He will be working in the Times of India and has published some research through Sage. He's
Yeah.
wondering if he would be eligible to get the Rhodes Scholarship. Uh,
Yeah, and I can see. Okay, look, I think, I mean, I must apologize to all the students whom I don't manage to reply, but pretty much every week I get a couple of these emails on going abroad, and I just can't actually entertain each email. And that is the reason I am always happy to go for these like group sessions, which involve 30, 40 students, because I have my own commitments for my research and I have my own life. So that I just can't do one-to-one conversations. And there is no rocket science, like I can say that with all these things, you will get funding. It really depends on who is applying with you. And it's always comparative whether you get the funding or not. So if you have this kind of CV, or if somebody has similar CV as Arushi has just read, uh, and if somebody really has CV higher than yours, then obviously that person is going to get the funds. So I think this is already, you have a great CV. So I don't see, but there is no guarantee. It's like also with absolutely one of the best proposals get rejected from the best professors. So I'm not even talking of students. I'm talking of really established professors. When they apply for funding, even their proposals at times get rejected. So it really depends on the situation. Now with COVID, things have changed again dramatically. You will have different focus on funding altogether, which sometimes may have now, a focus on COVID somehow, or to do with health. And I think public health already is becoming the big field. So you may have more distribution. So I really don't have a good answer for this, because only when you sit on the selection committee, depending on the kind of applications you get, you make a decision. So there is no straightforward answer, unfortunately. Yeah.
but I just just a thought on that, Sumit. I guess maybe it's worth mentioning which are the scholarships that do take into account an applicant's background. So something like roads, typically we've seen that only from very influential families, like whose
Yeah,
parents
yeah, yeah.
grandparents went to Oxford, get in, whereas something like Felix pays special
Yeah,
attention where you're coming from. So maybe
it's
that
yeah, I
would be important for this group.
that's very important, Arushi. I think Felix and Inlax, these are two funding bodies which are slightly open to students who come from whatever, like humble backgrounds, but they are not necessarily open to people from, especially from Dalits or Adivasis. They may be open to within quote poor students, but they may not necessarily actually give preference to students who are socially marginalized, whether Dalits or Adivasis or even other backward caste students. So I would not really highlight that as most important. I think I would clearly say you have to be strategic. If that is not necessarily the criteria that they are going to go for, you can highlight everything else. But I would say that instead of really spending too much energy on these 2, 3 funding bodies, please go for like the big pool of funding which is already there in the West. Because I think Arushi has rightly said, yes, I mean, we have to admit the fact that there is no point in cribbing that there are these established families, they send their children. That is going to happen and that's not going to change. What is more important, you find different ways of reaching to different places. And there are ways. And I think what Sophia just said, there are different countries within Europe, they have better funding. And I personally always recommend everyone that you apply for this funding in India. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but don't expect too much. Just the amount of energy that you would put here, please put that abroad. Then the chances of getting some good funding there are very high.
Um, so I think this was something that we were talking about before, and we have maybe 20 minutes until we end. So as there is a question that is directly asking both of you to address what to keep in mind while writing a research proposal. This is because a lot of Bahujan students often think that their academic language is inadequate, or the topic they have in mind is not good enough or not new, and they, abandon the process. Uh, so you might, want to work for a few more years, get more experience, and then the is just lost. So maybe this is in alignment with what we were talking about, maybe the importance of a research proposal. uh, we can organize a different session for sure, but maybe we could touch upon it a little bit right now. um, Sophia?
Yes, so for me, the research proposals that I have seen and the ones I have written um, were maximum between 2 to 4 pages, I would say, with clear research ideas, something like does improve the political representation of minorities, improve health outcomes for children, and then with a short explanation of why it is important, is there a research gap, how do I plan to conduct this research. um, yes, so I think this is where I would go and really motivate, because sometimes, for example, it can be the case that due to still being young, the the methodology to evaluate the particular research question is not there yet. So someone reading the proposal will be able to see that, but understanding, look, this person has a very good research question. This means they can formulate research questions, they can evaluate the gap in the literature, and there's a clear path for policy to advance knowledge on this research question. So this is very good, because then the methodologies or finding data or something, so these are things that this is what the PhD is for. But the ability to show that you have something that nobody else has is something that you can already convey in the proposal. That's my short view in if just a quick thoughts on this right now. So for example, I can give you one case of someone who we interviewed. She was a master student in Madrid, and she applied. She wanted to look at the effects of automation on the division of the labor within the household and female labor participation. And we all thought this is an amazing question. The methodology that she developed to study this question wasn't perfect at all, but she identified a good data set, and the research questions were there. It's what it's not there in the literature, and we all wanted to hear more about this. So immediately she was ranked in the highest positions for interviews.
Yeah.
Sumit?
No, I think I think there is no point in again saying the same thing. One thing I'll say for sure is that please go with your research interests, because PhD is a very long-term commitment. So don't go just because there is funding for that. You may actually get really fed up after first year, and or you may not really do well. Uh, so yes, there is a need for framing the same project in different way. So that can be done. You need to pick up on those particular categories, especially with the professors. If they really don't find those categories that are there in the project, they may not actually be interested. So for example, when students in my university come to me when they want to work with me, I'm very clear that if it's not about labor, I don't want to supervise them. So it's otherwise it's a waste of my time as well. And it's students don't get to learn if they really somebody works on environment or health. So unless it's health and labor, then I'm interested. If it's not, then I'm not interested. But I'm very straightforward with that. So please pick up your topic of your own interest, because research is a long commitment, not just for those 4 years. Now, I've been working on the Bombay textile mills for the last 15 years now, almost 14 years. And I really love my topic. I still go back to my topic. I keep thinking about new themes. And so choose a topic which you really like. I mean, I of course write on other issues as well outside Bombay City. But Bombay City is something I really like to do research on. Within Bombay, it's labor. That's really my specialty. So you need to find your specialty. I'm not saying that this is something you should stick to, but I did not really plan. I didn't knew that when I started PhD that this is what I will actually spend another 15 years doing. But here I am actually after 15 years, and I still get excited with the new kind of literature or new material I find, and I enjoy reading about the city. So this is, I mean, sociology, political science, or even political economy for that matter. So please choose a particular broader theme, because it's not just PhD or a postdoc. The research is a very long-term commitment, and you might end up spending 30, 40 years within that broader theme. So please think about that part. And as far as language is concerned, my own understanding now has become that language is a really small component of the research proposal. So if I was to give grades to the research project, literally 60 to 70% is all about the structure of the proposal. How you write, what exactly goes, what is first you write, what is, whether it's introduction, your research question, your methodology, your hypothesis, whatever you want to write, your literature review, the gap, that systematic proposal itself gets 60 to 70 marks. And the language may be just 20 marks in some way. Like, it's language, don't make big fuss about language that people are writing this flowery literature kind of language. That is not necessarily needed. What is needed is, like, of course, the key concepts, make sure that you use them. And for that, the only way to go about is you start writing first. You put down your first proposal, you discuss with your friends and colleagues. Don't get hold on to those great proposals, because sometimes we think that we have discovered some great idea, and then somebody's going to steal. Nobody can steal, don't worry. If this is your idea, you can really go ahead with that. So the only way we do, and this is also we do continuously at the higher level as well. So even when you become professors, doesn't mean that you write research proposal and it's done. We all share our research projects within our community, our friends. They read and comment on the project. So I will highly recommend that you definitely go with that exercise. But in addition to that, if language is your concern, then these days on YouTube, you can find endless videos on the English language, but pay specific attention to the academic English language courses online, or to the videos which talk about academic English language. They are available in plenty and for free. And we all have done that. I have done the academic writing courses in Oxford, and they were always very helpful. So don't worry much about this language thing. Even the people who speak excellent English, I mean, these were my contemporaries in JNU, they are not the best scholars anyway by now. Okay, so just talking good English doesn't mean you have good ideas. Okay, people can just go and talking great English, but they can have really crappy ideas. So that you need to really keep in mind. So language is just 10 to 20% of the entire thing.
Thanks a lot, Sumit, for saying that, because I mean, I was a student at Delhi School of Economics, and it's very easy to get intimidated by someone who's just saying a lot of English. And it only, like, much later, like now, I look back and I realize there was no substance in it. So thank
And
you.
also, let me also add one thing, that people, those who talk in the class, doesn't mean that they always understand what the professors are talking. Now, since I am now moved to being a student and a researcher to being a professor now, it doesn't mean that people who keep just blabbering means they understand what the professors are talking. Sometimes they just want to add something from here and there, and they don't really stick to the point. So if you are one of those who don't really ask any questions, don't worry. I never asked a question till I finished my PhD in Oxford, honestly speaking, because I always doubted myself. But then over a period of time, I observed that all these kind of questions they're asking are pretty crappy questions, actually. So please be confident that, and open your mouth only when you have something good to say. Opening mouth all the time actually doesn't mean that you actually are giving attention. So open your mouth when you have really something simple to ask, something good to say. Just talking all the time doesn't mean that you're good. Really, don't do that actually.
So I think
Um,
we
uh,
have like the last question, which is sort of putting together questions from three people. One is Naveen, one is Vibhu, and the other one is Aditi. Aditi, we can't hear you.
Hello,
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
hear me?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to ask the
So
question?
yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, Sophie Sumit. So I wanted to comment about the research topic that we were discussing, and I really love the work that you do, Sumit. And to mention, there's one research by Sofia which I absolutely love, which shows that with increase in property rights, the violence, gender-based violence has come down.
Okay.
Okay, we have lost Aditi, looks like.
Yeah.
But you can ask the other questions in the
Yeah, yeah.
meantime.
So it is basically the same theme for Naveen and Vibhu and Aditi also. So I'm just going to rephrase it. So they're basically asking what do you think about maybe applying for an ME to the UK or somewhere in EU, both as a different opportunity for career advancement or as a stepping stone, building a desirable profile to ultimately apply for PhDs. Is that a good option? Or- yeah.
Yeah, maybe Sophia, you can start and then I'll go. Mike.
You're muted, Sophia.
Yeah.
So to start, if starting with a master is a good option, is it? ME is yeah. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so yes, for sure. So I would, for example, in my case, I went to do the masters in the UK. I had no clue about PhD. I knew nothing about PhD. Nobody I in my family or anyone I knew ever did a PhD, so I had no idea. And when I got there, I took very good grades. And then a professor told me, look, you have good grades. Why don't you stay with us? We find funding and you do a PhD here with us. So this is how it happened for me. Uh, and nowadays, especially you are so young, so I would absolutely go for a master, work really hard and getting good grades for your masters, because then you have all the opportunities open to you and you can choose what you want to do, if a PhD, if not a PhD, um, policy, whatever. So yes, for sure.
Thank you. Sumit?
Yeah. No, I would also say that if you get an opportunity to do one master's in Europe again or US, wherever, please go ahead and don't constantly calculate the years that somehow you feel that you will spend these 2 years, which you will anyway do in India as a PhD. So don't think about that. So if you have finished a master's, you can always spend one more year and take good training again. Worst will Nothing worst is going to happen. The worst will be that you will have another master's. Okay, so don't go, because one of the Indian tendencies that I have come across is that somehow you have finished masters, you feel, oh, why waste 2 more years for another master's in Europe? I would have finished half of my PhD already in India. So don't do that, because we all know that with all the best things in India, the training that you get outside India is still much better. Maybe in some like really natural sciences, things are better. I've studied in JNU myself, and I know the kind of training that we get there. So I was really glad to move out of JNU, India, or New Delhi itself. So other than that, it's a really great place academically. But if you want to get a training, which is extremely important, you ought to go out, even if it is for a short period. For those who are doing PhDs, I will recommend that in Germany there is something called sandwich program, whereby you spend 1 to 2 years in with some European, so in German university. I will highly recommend you to do that. In the UK, it is called, maybe UK it is called sandwich. I don't know. So I'm just mixing these two. And UK also, you have 1 year program where you can go and spend just 1 year. So you Also get to hang out with another research community there. So my own suggestion to all the Dalits, to Adivasis, and to all the other backward castes, simple is that whatever small opportunity you get, just go for it. Don't think that, oh, it's just for 2 weeks, I want to go for 10 years, whatever. No. If it is for a month, go for it. You might get exposed to new kind of people, new kind of ideas, and you never know what that kind might lead to. So even if you have an opportunity for 2 weeks, 10 days, 1 month, please go for it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if I mean, you can ask a question. I don't know, but yeah, if somebody wants to ask that question, but can be short, maybe. Yeah.
I think we haven't received the question, so we are also ready to close this.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have any closing, Sophia.
No, I think Aditi wants to make her question, but yes.
Yeah, Aditi, you can.
Go ahead.
No, so I think my question. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, I'm so sorry because I have really poor network connectivity and it keeps dropping in between. My question was around choosing between MA and PhD, and I think that got answered. I would just complete the comment that I was making about the importance of research. So, just to finish that, Sophia's paper on English property rights and gender-based violence, along with her work on intervention, which could lead to decrease in violence. I think these topics and Sumeet's topics around migration and discrimination and caste in occupation.
I think we have dropped. Like I think we lost.
Yeah, I think we lost her again.
So yeah, Sophia, maybe you can go ahead with that question.
Yeah. So Suresh is asking
the question.
Some institution Paris?
In Paris. Yes, so I know. So you have in Paris, you have the CREST, you have the Paris School of Economics, you have all these university Paris 1, 2, 3, up to 10. You also have the one that does the DIAL conferences. Como é que se chama? Aquela que faz as DIAL conferences. Universities in Paris. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, Dauphine, Paris Dauphine. Sorry, I was asking my husband. Yes, Paris Dauphine is also quite good. So they are. I'll tell you why in a second. And you also have a very good one for political science, which is fantastic. The Paris Dauphine, the CREST, and some other research centers around. That's I would say it's really good because you are still in the Paris cluster. So even if you don't get into PSC, which is very top and very fancy, you would be in the same research cluster. So you would have an opportunity to interact with people that you didn't get to interact because you didn't end up in PSC, for example. So yeah, so these so London, Paris, Munich, Zurich, Madrid, Barcelona, this is very good because you get a lot of universities and research centers in the same place. So many opportunities to apply, and at the end of the day, you are in that network. So.
Well, thank you so much, Sumeet and Sophia. This was extremely enlightening, very useful.
Sorry, Arushi, can I just have a quick last comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, usually, as I said, like a couple of years ago, I was, more than happy to, give individual guidance to students. But obviously, the responsibilities that I have increased over the period. I have a couple of projects that are going on. So there are times really I just don't have energy to entertain individual requests. So I have to really apologize to everyone who is there on this particular program as well, that it is possible that I may not be able to reply to your mail sometimes. But as I said, please go through each and every university website. There are frequently asked questions that should pretty much answer all your questions. Also for funding, there is always a frequently asked question kind of tab. Please go through them all the time. And this is where you will really have answers for each and everything you will have in your mind. As I said, with all of us, who get into different responsibilities, we are not able to do individual answers. So for example, which institution is good, which institution is not good, which is good in Paris or Spain, you really need to you need to do. And these days with Google, things are far more easier. Like you go for top 10 institutions in France, you'll get a list. So I think you need to really spend time and be more creative in using the Google, honestly. And really all the information is pretty much there. So I would highly recommend that instead of asking any one of us, I mean, you might feel that we are rude, but you have to understand that from our side, we get really lots of requests like that. And if we just cannot answer to each and every one. So I'm happy to apologize again, but this is just simply we can't do. Yeah. Thank you, but thanks for listening. And I hope this is helpful, all of it.
That's understandable, but we still thank
So this is a very important session. Thank you, Sumeet and Sofia.
Aditi, we can't hear you properly. Okay. I think this may...
Just thank you for this time.
Aditi, your voice is really breaking. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this is a good time to end the meeting. I guess Aditi is trying to thank you. I'm just going to take the liberty and convey our gratitude. Yeah, she is. So thank you so much for taking out the time for this, and we hope we can build a continued relationship through this platform, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. Bye-bye.